possible, but real people, if these controls come out of the way, will know what to do. I think people learn how to be criminals in jail by doing something like maybe having a marijuana charge or something, and then they, then they get disadvantaged, and then they're scarred because they've been in jail, and then they start to be criminals.
Right.
That sort of thing, where it hurt people.
That's right. Well, there are some game changers. One thing that I've learned over the years that I've been doing this show is that the technology is held by private corporations in various places, that we're not supposed to know about, is approximately 10,000 years ahead of what we're allowed to have. And part of that is free energy and anti-grav and a lot of other things that seem Star Trek-y. But
a lot of things that the Egyptians had. It was absolutely proof perfect that the Egyptians had all of that, and that Tesla knew that, and that it was shut down by exactly J.P. Morgan because they thought, hey, we can make money on everybody, and they are.
And
look how much money they're making.
Oh,
I've said this before on the air, but maybe not on your show. If you and your family got every dollar back that you paid in taxes, interest, and utilities all at once, you'd have $1 million or more.
Wow.
Think. In your whole life and their whole life.
Wow. Yes, and the other thing I heard is if we had the money from the bailouts, which ended up being in the trillions, every person in America would immediately get a check for $350,000. That wouldn't be bad. That would have solved a lot of problems.
Well, we can solve all our problems if we stop making them. Well, we say we. It's them. It's when they say, well, who's them? Them and us and all of that. Like real people, I think, are basically good. And the thing is that even the most hardened criminals and bad people who do bad things, they're hurting. And I know that you can't fix everything, but people can be encouraged to change, and they can change as soon as you get out of the irritating electromagnetic frequencies or get off aspartame connected to fluoride and all these different things and pharmaceuticals making toxic cocktails. Take all that away, settle people down, put them in nature, and it will change.
Yeah. Yes, I agree with you. We know what needs to happen. So, maybe it's a matter of alignment with a sufficient number of people, and the 100th monkey theory would kick in.
Well, when the Fancy Pants bomber happened last year on December 25th, I knew it. I knew they were going to do something right around Christmas when people and it just seemed so predictable to me. And I started digging around, and right away it wasn't coming up about what that was really about. Again, TSA, the radiation, again, push. It's predictable, and this WikiLeaks and the way they're framing this guy and the real history of it and who's really behind it.
Yes.
And the whole history, it's predictable so that they can say, oh, it's a security leak, we have to do this and that and this and that. So this is back to David Icke's problem, reaction, solution.
Yep.
And people are aware. Things are happening right away, and people are on it.
Yeah.
And they're deciphering it. And we're communicating on internet. So their idea will probably be to try to kill it, cancel clear, because it's probably not that possible to do. But the thing is that the way internet works, the way a computer works, is actually the way our brain works.
Oh.
The memory and all of it. The amount of RAM you have, the amount of capacity that you have to think, all of these things can be, we are superhumans. And I'm not talking about a machine kind of thing. We have the same DNA as the ancient Egyptians did, and they were capable of manifestation, teleportation, all of it, levitation, anti-gravity. They were doing it. And I'm absolutely certain of that. The evidence is everywhere. The symbolism will show it to you, and I can walk you through that. And the Pyramid Code is a good start to piece it together. But it's not something that you can cover in an hour-long conversation or, in a few little animations. It's a bigger story, and I think everybody who watches the Pyramid Code knows that there's much between the lines, and there's much that's implied, and more that can be said. But we have the capacity to be psychic, to communicate with one another, and we are gaining in abilities.
Yes.
People are more psychic than they were. Things are trying to dumb it down, but despite that, people are still becoming more sensitive. And
Yes.
so we've got these two different trends going. The evolutionary trend that's pulling us out, and then the oppression part that's pushing us back down. But I think it's their turn to be done. Actually, between you and me, I'm really surprised that things haven't fallen yet.
Yeah, I am too. I am too. I was kind of hoping for a couple of years ago, but I've been sitting here drumming my fingernails on the table and waiting, but it doesn't happen. So I'm just going to have to see what happens. I mean, I'm here now. Might as well see what happens in 2012.
Well, the thing is that we're already in that energy, particularly so close to solstice, and from 2008 through to 2010, we're ratcheting in. We're zooming through the galactic center right now, and we are electromagnetically changing, and that's why the interference patterns of the electrostatic energy are creating some kind of a conflict. But even, sending links to interviews back and forth and informing ourselves, there's just so much. We have such a capacity now to be able to absorb information and connect it to our gut and know. Mm-hmm. We've got sensors now that say no, yes.
Yes, that's right.
That person's lying.
Yes.
This person I trust.
Yep.
Yes?
Yep.
That's right. Something fishy about this. I'm not sure, but let's just reserve. And we are listening to ourselves.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you on that one, and it is happening for me too. So, I know enough people that it's happening to see that that's a trend that's continuing.
Absolutely.
Now,
and with leading the Egypt trips, people say, I need to go to Egypt with her. And they're in. That's enrollment. A self-selection of somebody who really gets the sense. And I have nothing to do with that other than, speaking and producing films and books. But the thing is that it's an alignment, and it was my conviction on the spiritual level when I started all of this that the point was to trigger high-level initiates who already remembered. So I fully anticipate that the people who come to Egypt with me are already going to have this knowledge buried in there somewhere.
Yeah,
and people do get triggered now. They may get zapped with energy somehow and then have to really go into incubation when they come home a little bit to sort it out. But they're all emerging with a higher level, a higher vibration, and more abilities. So it's amazing, actually.
You've been in some of the places with your groups and alone that people are usually not allowed to go to over the years. What are some of the mystical experiences or feelings or spiritual experiences that you've had over the years?
Well, a lot.
That would take another show, wouldn't it?
A lot even more. But the thing is that, the strongest for me personally has been the time I spent inside the body of the Sphinx, alone. And it used to be that a watchman would come and let me go in, but they wouldn't come in with me, but they're still in the Sphinx enclosure. And what these places are is magnification fields of everything, including thought forms. And so when I was finally allowed to go into the entire enclosure by myself, with nobody there, the experience was magnified dramatically.
Wow.
And whenever I have been, I'm not talking around the Sphinx, I'm talking inside.
Wow.
So there's an inner chamber of the heart of the Sphinx. There's chambers at the back that are, I say, wormholes because they're spiral. Tremendous vortex of spiral energy moving in more than one direction. And every time I went into the Sphinx, I wouldn't sleep for 72 hours after.
Wow.
And that is a fact. And I'd be downloading all these light codes, and there's a big, process about that in terms of how to unpack them. And that's why I use the metaphor for the computer, and that's why I've been technologically oriented from the beginning. The gadget queen, but I started computing in 1982. I didn't know anybody who had a computer, but I had one. The only email address I had was the guy at the store. And so, but it is about downloading a program, but the thing is that then what? Just because you've downloaded the program doesn't mean you've installed it. And after you install it, doesn't mean you've made anything with it.
Yeah.
Right? And these are the same processes when you download a light code. Right? How do you use it? And it's human capacity that unpacks it. And so, I mean, I can keep going here, but there's 66 codons that are required. So it's 11 on the front of the body, 11 on the back. So every person comes with 22, and it requires 3 people, which because of that level of energy, to unpack these programs. Oh. And so what ends up happening is a group of people will be together, or a few people, and all of a sudden everybody's finishing each other's sentences, and suddenly there's this wisdom coming. But it's a program that's already been installed, that gets triggered and turned on when there's sufficient surface area of consciousness to unpack it. Now, I mean, okay, so I'm glad it makes sense to you, but this isn't something that's talked about. I've never heard anybody say that.
I've never heard anybody else say this.
But I know it's true because I've seen it happen over and over again. So the question was, what are the level of mystical experiences that I've had by spending time in these places? Well, I've been able to be alone in a lot of places and go back without a group. I mean, all the time that I've gone, I go in with the group and I stay late, or the other way around. And I've actually lived in Egypt and been able to go on the plateau every day and get into these spaces. So, I mean, I've had many, many experiences, and I've journaled all of them. And it's all the same thing. It's about increasing our capacity to handle energy, which is what the ancient initiates were able to do. And so when I see reenactments of Egypt, I always think it's laughable because they don't have the posture to be able to hold the energy. Like they're kind of hunched over, and it's like, that's never going to work, right? When you think of figure skaters and, you know, how they extend their arms and how they stand, and they're actually flipping around on spiral vortices and landing on blades. Well, that's the level of posturing that the initiates were able to do, and that's what you see on the temple walls. But when you see people reenacting it, if they're not, you know, choreographed in a way that they understand this energy, then it's not going to happen. So when you look at frescoes, you'll see bands on the ankles, bands on the wrists, and bands on the top of the arms. Well, the ones on the top of the arms are what you would get if you understood sex magic, but that's understanding how to work the feminine and masculine energy and the kundalini and move it through the body and open around it, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean sexuality. It means some kind of sex magic, which is energy magic. And the ones on the wrists and the ankles are about holding the field. So when this huge amount of energy comes through, because it's my conviction that the high-level initiates were part of an energetic machine, very much like neural synapses. Don't touch each other. They create a hormone that jumps across, and that's giving the signal. The remarkable thing for your arm to be able to move up and down and connect to the brain with your thought that says, I'm moving my hand. So the human divining rods were the high-level initiates.
Wow.
And these bands held a space around them so they didn't get electromagnetic-uted, if you will, which is a word I've needed to make up because we don't have such a word. Yeah. But it's the same process as getting electrocuted. You didn't have the capacity to shield that amount of energy, but it was not electrostatic energy. It was electromagnetic energy, non-polluting and free.
Wow.
So this is what they were up to, and this is how we build our capacity. And the thing is that we do, in fact, you know, everything that, you know, what do they say? That which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So if we've endured a lot of stress and had loss and, you know, grief and trauma and whatever, if we get over it and move to become conscious and integrate the feeling instead of jumping over it, you know, and forgiving before you process sort of thing. Oh, everybody has to forgive, but do you know what you're forgiving sort of thing? And get through it. The next time stress comes, you've got more of a capacity to deal with it. And, you know, with grief and loss, if someone passes, you know, where did they go? Well, the Egyptians, I think they had a pretty good grasp. They had no word for death. So it's true that we have the loss, that the person isn't walking around in our everyday world. But they're here with us still. And so people who lose, others that don't understand this, that are religious, if you will, with God outside them instead of inside, and you only live once and reincarnation is, you know, outlawed, then how do you ever get over the loss of a person? Because apparently they look gone. Right. So these are things, again, I keep coming back over and over, that the Egyptians were modeling. They had the template for understanding how to be an empowered human in service to the whole of humanity and to the whole of the cosmos, it seems. Because why did they need to know so much about celestial mechanics?